Meeting to order, 5:30. Can we have a roll call vote, please, by the secretary?
Christopher Abel,
Here.
Viv Hansen,
Here.
Matthew Phipps,
Here.
Stacy Seldner, here, Matthew Spalding,
Here.
Harry Trask,
Here.
Tony Vostelka.
Here. The next part of the organizational meeting is selection of officers, which we start with the board president. Is there any nominations for board president? I nominate Stacy Soner. It's been nominated for Stacy Soner. I will second that. There is a second. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? It's been nominated that Stacy Soner be elected to board president. And so I would ask board president Stacy if you would like to accept that and serve in that capacity.
I will.
Then I will turn the gavel over to you.
Okay. Okay. We now need to look at nominations are now open for the office of the vice president.
I'd like to nominate Viv Hansen.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Can I make a little speech?
If you'd
Try
like.
to stop me, huh? I think we got along, pretty well last time, even though there were some differences. And I want to continue the regime of the team play approach to things. And I think rather than going to our neutral corners and then coming out fighting, I'd rather have, all the people inside the camp. And so I'm strongly recommending it.
Any other nominations for vice president?
I nominate Matthew Spalding. I'll second it.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice president? And I'll ask one more time, any nominations for the vice president position? Okay, nominations for the office of vice president are now closed. Blank ballots are set at each board member's seat of paper here. If you complete that and we're not there yet.
Oh.
Yeah, so we'll complete that and Lori will pick those up and announce who that will be.
Just for vice president?
Huh?
Just for vice president?
Yes. Yeah. Each separate and.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very skilled. Okay. So we walk through that. Okay, Matthew Spalding. Viv Hansen. Just an extra one. Viv Hansen. Matthew Spalding. Viv Hansen. Matthew Spalding. And Matthew Spalding. Matthew Spalding 4, Viv Hansen 3.
Okay, congratulations, Matt. Nominations are now open for the office of treasurer. And are there any nominations from the floor?
I nominate Tony Vostelka.
Okay, Tony.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations for treasurer? Okay, and last time, any other nominations for treasurer?
I'll nominate Gary Trask.
I'll second that.
Okay, nominations for office of the treasurer are now closed. The blank ballots are set on your seats. So if you just want to go ahead and write down who you want, Angela will pick those up.
Not from being the finance committee.
Thank you.
Do I have to make one? If it'll nurse it.
Thank you. Carrie Trask. Carrie Trask. Tony Vaselica. Carrie Trask. Tony Vaselica. Tony Vaselica. And Tony Vaselica. 3 for Carrie Trask, 4 for Tony Vaselica.
Thank you. Congratulations, Tony. Okay, our next item of business is, we need to appoint our board secretary. And we'll need a motion in a second. This is a non-board, position. And Lori Brown is typically our board secretary, so, I need a motion in a second to, have Lori appointed as our board secretary.
I move.
Second.
Carrie Trask,
Yeah.
Matthew Phipps, second. We do not need to,
We don't-
papers for that. Right, right. And then, so all in favor of board secretary, Lori Brown?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the next one is our deputy treasurer and deputy clerk. Again, this is a non-board position. And we would need a motion in a second to appoint, Angela Erdman as our deputy treasurer, deputy clerk.
My motion. Second.
Matthew Spalding and Tony Blastelica for a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, the appointing of committee members, I'd like to talk about that a little bit when we get to that, the governance model in the regular or the special meeting agenda. So we will discuss that then. So then I would make a motion or ask for a motion to adjourn our organizational meeting.
Motion adjourned. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, our organizational meeting is concluded.
So January, so back.
Yeah.
So this is Seattle, this one.
Only takes a step.
Right.
Whichever spot you want to say.
Musical chairs.
Oh, I'm going home. Yeah, you're going home. You're going home.
Oh. You're going to Matt's. Oh.
Come this way.
Huh?
You can sit here? Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think you would. No, I hope it's true. It's 5 hours. Which one?
Thanks, Freddie. Okay, it is 5:41, April 26th, special Board of Education Mankato School District meeting. We will go ahead and start by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Lori, would you please take roll?
Christopher Abel.
Here.
Vic Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Present.
Stacy Selman.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Harry Trask.
Here.
Tony Baselica.
Here.
Okay, we will move into our first order of business, which is our consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to have taken off the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay. So Matthew Spalding and then Matt Phipps. Okay, great. All in favor of approving the items in the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, and then we're going to move right into the report of the superintendent. And our first item is our personnel report. And I would need a motion and a second to approve our personnel report.
I move we approve the personnel report.
I'll second.
Any second? Okay, any discussion or questions at all about the personnel report? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, and then we have a strategic plan update by Jim.
Just as I had previously noted to the board in terms of before it's switched, that we are working now onto the performance metrics, to work to finalize those as well as strategies. And so I have a kind of a mini retreat with my executive team on May 10th. That's really is going to start digging into this more so that we get set up for next year to launch. So we're continuing to move now based on those 5 pillars and working to finalize those metrics.
Excellent. And then moving right into, I'm sorry, any discussion or questions for Jim about the strategic plan? Okay, district activity update.
Some things for your calendar, quarter century and retirement celebration that we have annually, and this will be at the Capitol Civic Center on May 30th. 2023 would start with 4:30. Would be a reception there, followed by awards at 6 p.m. and that will be at the Capitol Civic Center. There was communication sent out to all employees. We also have youth apprentice night, an evening honoring Lincoln High School youth apprentice students and business partners. That's Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. Hors d'oeuvres start at from 5 to 6:30 with the award ceremony at 6:30 p.m. I would also like to make reference in terms that we're continuing with the ad hoc group. So we had probably our final meeting this year of the PTO presidents. That was well attended. I think we had one school that was missing. It's elementary schools. Really generating some good feedback, including SFA. One of the reports was that I think it was Franklin with Brenda, who was the SFA coordinator, met with the PTO and was going to give frequent updates. And it's really been very engaging with the parents, bringing them involved. They've also shared with me some of their concerns regarding facilities and also updates on behavior. And so it's again proving to be a valuable source. Next Monday, Katie and I will be meeting with our special ed group, for the second time, and that'll probably be the last one for, trying to keep it within the school year. May will be, too much, and then we'll pick that back up again next school year. So that's good. And then I'm now picked up the ad hoc behavior, so I will continue that as one of my advisory groups too, and we'll continue to meet on Thursday. They're working on making sure that we have uniform handbooks. And so they're working on that now on Thursdays, every other week, I believe it is. And Kathy won't be at this one, but she was assisting me while chairing that, for me in terms of working with me, but I'll carry that. And I have not yet had a chance to follow up on the student advisory one. How do we get the student's voice elevated too? And we had Colin previously was working on that because he was assigned to the high school, but I have not done anything there. And we also talked about the potential of having a high school student rep, potentially as part of the board meeting, which many schools do. But again, that's the come. We're kind of exploring how to elevate the student's voice here too. The last thing I would report out is a recognition of our school resource officer at Lincoln High School, Officer Miranda Check, was nominated by her direct supervisor, who noted Miranda, she has been selected as Police Officer of the Year. Wow. So that was quite a recognition, knowing that Miranda has shown dedication to her job, the students and staff at Lincoln High School, and the citizens of Manitowoc. And in addition to her normal job responsibilities, Miranda has donated her time to several programs such as Shop with a Cop, MPPA Show Greeter, Police Cadet Program, Citizens Academy, and Housing Facility Dog Ally as needed. In May 22, Officer Check was nominated for the Excellence in Education Award for her role as the Lincoln High School SRO. According to the school administration, SRO Check has done a great job building relationships and connecting with students and families who attend Lincoln High School. Miranda also provides a vital role in ensuring the safety of both students and staff by serving as a facilitator at Lincoln's emergency response team. So that's my report.
Okay, and then we're going to move into unfinished business, which is our board education governance review. Our new members both got this book, and what we've been talking about is how to elevate our governance model. And there's a couple different standing committees in here that are different than what we've done in the past. So we've been talking about that. Jim and I had a chance to talk with the author last week, and he gave us, some suggestions. One of the things that the book suggests and the author suggests is that, you don't jump into this and that you have kind of an ad hoc committee or a group that looks at how you would implement this. And if we were going to go with that. So my suggestion at this time would be, and this is up for discussion, obviously, but that we would have our executive team look at that and present a model of implementation that we would try to do by the beginning of the school year. And if that's something that we would want to move forward with. And in the interim, I'm proposing that we do a committee of the whole structure to do our committee work until we adopt something new in the fall. So what would happen is, and my husband reminded me that Two Rivers does this. It would be kind of like a working meeting where we would all be together. And so we would be covering things, anything that's going to come up. So we really have to work on policies. And so instead of us, 3 people doing that, bringing it out of the committee, then bringing it to the whole board, everybody gets that deliberation on that, and we can move forward and act on that information. I think that would be more timely. And I think it would, narrow our focus of what we need to get done, while the executive team looks at, do we want to incorporate these new committee structure? So with that said, ideas, thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I looked at the book again and I really found it pretty unsatisfactory in lots of ways. I mean, it was so redundant, and it really didn't get to the point of describing what governance is. It's like, oh, let's be future looking, and let's not be bogged down in sort of rubber stamping things that the administration wants rubber stamped, etc. I mean, I'm all in favor of that, but I don't see what it, I don't really have, and you may be able to explain this to me because, I'm old, but it just didn't seem to me to be, accomplishing much.
Mhm.
I mean, if there was greater clarity, I think in the pros, it might be, it might really become clear to me, but honestly, I just couldn't see the advantages of moving in this direction. And, I think weakens the role of the board in many ways. It kind of, it lumps us all together with this council of, chief executives of the administration and the superintendent, et cetera. And I think, one of the reasons I think that this may not be too workable is because this model assumes a lot of consensus, and I think there's a lot of division on this board. And I think that there are very different visions on this board, and I can't see this model bringing us to any kind of consensus.
Setting aside the book, because I thought it was kind of dry too. I had a hard time
Oh,
reading
worse
it.
than that.
Yeah, right. What we obviously do need to kind of change things up, because we do have a lot of segmented parts that we end up not being able to mix together when we're dealing on certain issues like finance and building and ground. You know what I mean? So we can make it more efficient. What suggestions would you have? I mean, do you like the committee as a whole type thing for?
Oh, I think the committee of the whole is a good working structure. I think we should have been using that all the time, because it allows for greater flexibility of discussion. I'm always sort of bothered by committees that, with 3 people on them, sort of try to veto things. And I just think that the committee of the whole should be an addition to what we've got. My part of the problem too is I'm not even clear what we've got, because when Jim says in the last meeting that I didn't attend that we voted on a fairly general motion to do success for all, etc. And then when we voted on that, I didn't think that by voting on that at the time, we advocated any kind of role in implementing that program. But I see that we don't get a vote on the contract. We don't have virtually anything to say, apparently, from the mail I got in terms of what we're putting in and what we're taking out, etc. So I have no constitution for this board that I can compare those actions to see if what we're authorized to do or what we're not authorized to do. I mean, I would sort of start with, okay, what is the responsibility of the board? And do we have a kind of a constitutional-like document? Which, as far as I know, and I've been on, for a while now, and I've never seen hide nor hair of it. And I think that we could, by doing that, kind of build in some changes in the committee structure.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think there's way too much vagueness, and I think there's, as a result of the last 2 elections, I think we've got a less than a consensus kind of approach to things.
Thanks, Carrie. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd like
Tony.
to comment. It's interesting that you said that, Carrie, because I think part of that, or there was a section of that book that spoke to, the board collaborating better and, how do you get the most out of the board? And I've also, gone back and forth a little bit on this. When they first, came with this idea last year, I was, intrigued. And then as I started reading into it, it took me a while to wrap my head around it. I was kind of going back and forth. And then, for a while there, I wasn't convinced that it was, worth looking into. But now, after spending a little bit more time looking at it the last couple of weeks, I think we should at least explore the possibility that we can do things more efficiently. And the one thing that my big takeaway from reading that book was, talking about the silo committees and the way that we're doing things now. And keep in mind, I don't think anyone's saying that we're definitely gonna do this. I think it's just we're doing more due diligence on it to see what's the best fit for the board long term. But, my big takeaway was that, looking at the committee approach right now and the way we have it, in all these silos, and I know you mentioned that numerous times the last year, and especially for our newer board members, sometimes it's hard to get, the bigger picture view, right? We're kind of in the weeds doing things that, in my opinion, probably aren't as high value, and really in the governing role, that we should be. And I think it's really, this to give us an opportunity to define what that looks like and eventually optimize our board, to give us the best chance of success possible. So my thoughts are, I think it's certainly worth exploring. And I think it's, we're asking our whole district to get better, right? I mean, everyone's, pushing that, and we shouldn't have any less expectation of ourselves as board members. So that's my 2 cents right now.
That's second. That's really good.
I certainly agree with your principles there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just kind of explain my point of view, Carrie. Like, the governance overview of this new thing that we might be proceeding to go to. I have no ill will towards it or against it. So, like, I don't have prejudice or divisiveness that's coming out to try to determine if we should do this or not. I think we're getting confused. Good conversation, good discussion into divisiveness or agendas. Like, I have no agenda either way of this. I'm trying to find the best path for the district to be successful. So in this particular instance or any, I'm not trying to be biased. I'm trying to do what we can do our best for our serving the community. So that's why I don't kind of follow that narrative of what you're saying about how, we don't have the best idea forward, or this is not a good idea in alone, the new governance, because I don't know if we should do it either. So I'm still completely trying to discuss about it and find the best possible solution. And realistically, I want to have ways that we can, have synergy between we'll call it silos, or between our voices, that we can have a goal, a bigger picture. Our strategic plan is put that out there now as a goal, but now we need to have a way to utilize that. So I'm trying to figure out that as well. So I don't have any ill will either way, trying to say we should do this or not do this. So I think I've been pretty forward about it as well, just trying to figure out the best solution.
This is really kind of fun to read, but my first question is, what has been wrong with the system we currently have?
Yeah.
I mean, it's worked over the years. My second concern is, I have no problem exploring it, looking at it, but I guess my thought would be there should be an ad hoc committee that represents the board. We just went through an election and 2 board members were voted off. There are 2 new board members. And I think if you just have the executive committee look at this, you are missing that new group that the voters of the district wanted on the board.
Sure.
So I think that that's something we have to look at in putting that ad hoc committee together.
Okay.
It's very obvious there is a split. It's very obvious the voters understand that. And I think we need to reflect that we're working together to try to change things for the better. And I think you get that if you have an ad hoc committee that represents the 2 different sides of the board. And let's be honest, there's 2 sides. And we have to work together to get there.
How do you feel about, if we went to a committee, the whole structure for a while?
It's probably okay. At different levels of government I've been on, there's usually 5 members because they're bigger boards, and you get a little bit more discussion than you might get with 3. I think that would work for a while, but I think it's this process we have to go through to find out if this is right or not.
Yeah.
And if we have to go committee of the whole for a while, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me preface everything with just saying straight up, I'm happy to be told if I'm wrong. Okay? If I have failed to find something because there's a lot of stuff to read, I haven't gotten to it all. So when I say I haven't seen something, if it's there and you know where it is and I don't, please tell me. I'm always happy to be told. Seriously.
when I'm wrong. Okay, so the first thing I would say is if you were going to, and I do not mean this in any sort of pejorative way, play around with the committee structure. Now clearly is the time to do it, both when you have a changeover composition of the board and when you actually have bylaws which inexplicably, to me, do not enumerate standing committees at all.
Correct.
I've never seen that before.
Right.
But
Well, which is another thing that we.
yeah,
need
so
talk
to
about.
find a structure and then I hope work them into the bylaws so that it's not as, you know, right now to find what the standing committees are, you have to go look for who's assigned to them.
Sure.
And that's normally what the committees do. What they are and what they do is enumerated in your bylaws, and I couldn't find them in there. So I do think that's a good thing to do. Looking at these different possibilities and seeing how we can balance these things out and taking the time to do it to make sure we don't leave something out of one of them so that later one of the committees becomes the dumping ground for everything you forgot and another, you know, I think that's a really good thing. My only concern is with your work meetings. I don't know, you guys have much better sense than I do of the work that's involved that normally goes to the committees, how workable that is time-wise at one meeting a month. If we can do it, I say that's a good way to do it as we sort through the other stuff.
I think, just to piggyback on a couple of those things.
I'll wait, yep, just me.
Is that, I think that's part of our governance problem is there is no definition for these. And which has, you know, when we came in, it was very director driven. And the board members didn't feel like they had, you know, but there are committees and we're running them. So, you know, this idea is to synergize the board relationship with the superintendent and executive team. So you're absolutely right. And I think that's what kind of makes us feel kind of funny because we don't have a clear direction on what, you know, what is this, what are we supposed to be tasked with? The other thing I will say about the time is that I think there are a lot of things that come to a committee level that are probably in the weeds where we start to micromanage, which I know we don't want to do, but it naturally happens because the agenda is set as such. So a lot of the things that traditionally, you know, we may have done or brought to a committee may not be in our purview. And so, you know, what I'm suggesting is that the working or the committee of the whole, first of all, focuses a lot on, you know, absolutely things that we have to do, you know, things that finance is going to bring to us that we have to do, budgeting, things like that. But we are so behind in our policies, you know, that's going to be a huge thing. And also looking at our bylaws, you know, things like that. So I would probably put a cap on what is going to be at that committee of the whole. So we're not here and we table something, we get to as much as we can. And, you know, because we could be here forever, but that's how I see that running.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to elaborate on what you said because I totally agree. And I think it stems from the way our governance model is working now because like the bylaws, it's not being in the bylaws. There's a lot of different policies and stuff that we want to go over, but everything is so silo, you know, regimented now that there's a lot of things in between that are not mixing together. And we're not concentrating on those because we have no idea, you know, who's going to review these policies, who's going to review that, who's going to get that into the bylaws. Is that finance? No. Is that building and grounds? No. So it's a way to make things more efficient and intertwine a little bit so we can cover those things. I think a lot of things get overlooked the way that we're doing them now. And that's kind of where, at least in my mind, we're on about where we are stemming from and at least trying to do something different.
Anybody else?
If I might just, you know, offer, you know, one of the things that I heard here tonight, and I think it's kind of understood, I heard division. And at the same time, I would say there's more commonality over the main thing of student achievement as being the driving force. And I had that total agreement with the last board entirely. And we talked about keeping the main thing the main thing. And so this model was introduced to me from a school board association consultant, and Edie has numerous other books on governance. He's one of the role models out there. And he's just recognizing, why does everything look good and yet we're not achieving at that level? And they would say the main thing that brings that about is the board. So something wasn't working here for us to have the results that we had. And so the structure is, I'm very comfortable. I could work with any of those environments, including the committee of the whole. But the silos thing, I think do work against us, myself, even though I can work in that environment. So really, my desire is all of us working on the main thing. How do we, if you remember, so I've heard it from Covey, but if you had a glass container and you had to put rocks and pebbles and sand in there, what would you put in first? If you put in sand, you're never going to get the big rocks or your big things that you want to accomplish, because you haven't thought about what's your top priority. You put those rocks in, all of a sudden you can put pebbles in, and you can fill the whole container up and get everything in. But if you don't do it right, you can't deal with your big. And I think that's a little bit. And so it was really like just having us reflect and examine this opportunity. Was presented to me from the school board association consultant. Even though it's a pioneer saying, why do we look good but not accomplish things? And so it was a matter of opening up discussion with the board. What do you want to do? And you conveyed to me, you want this your priority. And I think the current seated board feels the same way. So rather than talking about the divisions and what separates us, I think what unites us is that focus on student achievement.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with what Jim's saying. And I would encourage everyone on the board and the community, let's move away from the spirit of division and move more towards the spirit of collaboration, right? Ultimately, and I'm speaking, honestly here, I just want to do what's best for the kids, right? We may have differing ideas on what that is and how to approach that, but, through good dialogue and debate, we could ultimately decide what's the best, right? So good, robust discussion. So I encourage that mindset with everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the premise of the book, and that, I agree that the current structure, which I think has been used all over Wisconsin, and it's been used with every board I've ever belonged to.
Absolutely.
And there's some real deficiencies in it. I agree. And so far in his argument, he's got me on that.
Right.
I think I don't buy his proposals for changes so much, because it seems to me, I think it was Matt or Tony was saying, or it was Jim that was saying, well, okay, our highest priority is academic achievement. We don't have a committee that even deals with that. And that's not even proposed in here. It's just like, oh God, let's do some planning, and it seemed kind of vacuous and general, and sort of like, oh, this proposal seems to replace the busy work we're doing now with just a different kind of busy work that I think actually gets at less rather than more of what we need to get to. The other thing is that on budget priorities, we have a finance committee, and we get around with talking about, gee, should we have a referendum that does this, or should we have it? And that's all productive. But the fact of the matter is that we don't do anything in terms of saying, well, maybe we should really shift priorities in terms of how we allocate our resources. And I think that's real governance, and that isn't dealt with here, and that's not dealt with the committee's structure that was proposed at the last meeting that was there. If we're going to do it, I think we really have to get into governance,
right?
Not just dicking around and saying, oh, gee, wouldn't it be nice to do this? And I think one of the places where we didn't function very well is that we really did not have a committee or a board that really, really evaluated strictly success for all. I mean, that is a big elephant in the room. And I think, you know, we got infatuated with the idea because, you know, we are, as a board and including me, you know, want to improve the academic achievement here. But, you know, we really didn't look at other sorts of ways of dealing with it that might have, in fact, made us more sold on success for all. Or, you know, it might have been really good for us to just talk about, well, what do we do in terms of advancing the academic achievement of the students? And I think, you know, we should have had a committee that dealt with, you know, what's been in my mail since I got back, and that is people really worried about.
So I'm gonna get us back on focus here.
Okay.
So without any serious objection, I would like to move to a committee of the whole structure, and you know, and then talk about who we might have as an ad hoc committee to do some of that stuff, because I agree with you that. So without, is that okay if we do our committee work for now in the interim as a committee of the whole structure? Okay.
I move that we do that.
Okay, and then, so what I'm gonna do is, we won't pick the time right now. I wanna wait till the end of the meeting because we have to talk about some other different timings of things. So we will have that, at the end of this. We'll talk about how, what day we wanna do that and parameters, okay? Okay.
Can I just add one last thing?
Yes.
Carrie, I just wanted to point out one of the advantages as I, you know, dug into that book a little bit more. There was a page or an area that talked about the horizontal discipline with the way that their committee structures are versus the silo committee right now. And, you know, to your point, just how there's just the way that the things were done before, you know, we weren't really, you know, things were kind of chopped up and you didn't have that full view of what you needed. And so I think just in my experience, just having that, you know, big picture view constantly in front of you will make it easier for us to tie into our strategic plan, you know, to all of our meetings, right? So we just want to make sure that we're as efficient as we can be, and that will be, to Jim's point, focusing on the biggest thing, right? And that strategic plan, you know, we invested a lot of time and money into that, and I think we have a great guide for us. And now it's incumbent upon us to, you know, find the best way to implement that into all of our meetings and just make sure that we're spending our time on the highest value items. That's all that we want to accomplish.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, good discussion. I appreciate everyone's feedback. We'll move forward with that. Okay, some new,
Don't we have a motion?
oh, did you make a motion? I'm sorry.
I made a motion that we
Move
move
to
to
the-
the,
Okay.
move to the committee of the
Okay,
whole
all in
structure.
favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys for that. Okay, so new business, we have, this came out of committee, and both of these positions were recommended. The first one is the municipal field event coordinator, and Mike, if you would just give us a little background about, that position.
So the summer of 2022, last summer, it was considered a pilot program on which the title of, I should say, pilot position, not program, pilot position, on which they called the municipal field event coordinator. It was an individual who, for about 10 weeks, middle of June to the end of August, maintained the field, lines, infield, pitching mound, outfield, all those types of things, on and on. And kept the facility clean, those sorts of things. Had a stipend, about $3,000 stipend. And about a month ago or so, it was brought to my attention. Again, are we going to have that position this summer? Talked to Stan Dietrich, the athletic director for the high school, and he said it was really a valuable position to have. And he suggested that we continue with the position. So as Stacy said, I brought it to personnel committee, and it's here tonight. So I would encourage you to consider maintaining that position for this summer and ongoing in the future, and that stipend associated with that position.
Are there any questions or discussion about that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, and our second position is the school psychologist position. Again, this came out of committee after lots of discussion, but was recommending, the committee is recommending to the board to approve of this position. Katie, do you want to give us just, I think a lot of us were there, but just some background and.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide some clarification. I know there was some additional data that was asked for as a result of the conversation at the personnel committee. You'll notice that our school psych team spent some time updating the supporting document that you have. That includes some big umbrella areas that really encompass their essential roles and responsibilities for our schools. The amount of time or percent of time allocated to those big umbrella areas for their big three overall areas there, how much time they spend on each of those. And then on the last page, there's a breakdown of evaluations. My administrative assistant team did a great job of collecting this data, how many evaluations in the last 2 school years that our school psychologists have participated in. On initial evaluations, they are responsible for case managing those teams, which is an extensive amount of time as they lead, conduct the assessments, facilitate the meeting, interpret the test results, etc. Reevaluations are typically led and facilitated by our special education place managers, but they may play a role in assessing on those teams. And then we have our private school evaluations listed there as well. On that last page, under the evaluation data for the 22-23 school year, there's a typo. That should read 174 total evaluations, not 139. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that, which if broken down is the equivalent of about 43.5 total reevaluations for our school psychologist in that school year for each of them on our 4-person team. Another conversation that came out of our personnel committee was really delineating between the difference between a clinical psychologist and a school psychologist. So I wanted to take an opportunity to try to do my best in summarizing those 2 roles as simply as possible. And I certainly am not intending to offend any of the professionals in either of these areas with this simple description. But very simply, clinical psychologists, their primary role is to diagnose and treat mental health disorders in the clinical setting. They have a broad clinical area of expertise. Our school psychologists, on the other hand, are really responsible for supporting, diagnosing, and supporting academic, social, emotional needs within the school setting specifically. And their areas of expertise they specialize in addressing how learning challenges and school-related challenges impact a student's ability to access instruction and access the general education environment. And their services promote support in the school setting and success in the school setting. It's just a very simple summary of the difference between the 2. And I know that was a large part of the discussion of our personnel committee meeting. As you can also see on this supporting documentation, the vast majority of time right now in our 4-person model, our school psychology team is dealing with the identification and the support of students with disabilities. So as part of school-wide intervention teams, our school psych service experts in analyzing student achievement data, helping to develop intervention plans. They help to progress monitor when there is an identified need for some more targeted intervention. They progress monitor. They administer standardized assessments as part of our special education evaluation teams. These include their very unique ability to administer an intellectual assessment or an IQ test. And our school psychologists engage in this because of the determination of whether or not a student has the intellectual ability to achieve grade level coursework and standards. And then we also then in conjunction with that administer academic or social emotional assessments that provide us a picture of if whether or not the student has the ability to achieve and why they may not be achieving. So we talk about a discrepancy between ability and achievement. We talk about the need for specific targeted interventions. If a student has the intellectual ability to achieve at grade level standards, yet they are not, then how do we need to target and grow those students and their ability to access general education curriculum and general education instruction? Should we add this fifth person, you'll see that the ratio becomes a little bit more manageable and is a little bit more in line with what NASC recommends, the state of Wisconsin recommends, what our area districts, how comparable we are to those area districts. We would be able to increase the amount of time our psychs are spending in that general education umbrella, that more proactive umbrella. So we're making really good decisions, the right decisions about whether or not we're identifying the right students with having a disability, being part of those solutions teams and intervention teams to support teachers in implementing academic and social emotional supports and services for students in the classroom. So we would be able to flip that a bit from just primarily assessing our students with disabilities and supporting that and really spending some more time as part of those general education teams. As you can see, our trends in initial and reevaluations have been consistent over the last couple of school years. And again, per our conversation at the personnel committee meeting, we may need to do some additional assessing to dismiss some students from special education who have learned the ability and developed the skills to be independent and no longer need those services. So adding this fifth person will allow that script to flip a bit for that team in regard to their ability to better proactively support and serve all students in our school district.
Thank you so much. Yep.
I have a hurdle that I can't seem to get over, and obviously I want to make things easier for everybody, but I also have to be concerned with how we're spending the money. And the hurdle that I have is the whole situation we had last year. We had 4, and one of them was on maternity leave and was missing. So we did all of last year with 3.
I'm sorry, Matt, can I interrupt you? That's inaccurate.
Okay,
we had 1 person on a typical maternity leave for this school year, which is the equivalent of about 8 to 12 weeks max.
Okay.
That was this school.
All right. We did a good portion of last year with 3?
Nope, we had 4 full-time school psychologists for the last X amount of years.
But 1 was not on maternity leave last year. Why was that as part of the subject in the meeting we had? That was one of the things that came up that we talked about, and you never said that. I mean, it was a subject because she was on maternity leave and we were without one.
I think that exacerbated the amount of work that our school psychology team has. I think what our issue was in bringing that up is that we could not find a sub replacement for that person during that time because these people are so few and far between.
Correct.
So our goal in getting this to the board early for approval is that they're sort of unique unicorns.
And I totally agree. But let's go back to last year. You even said that we couldn't find a replacement, so we had one on maternity leave. I mean, is that correct or no?
Yep, for a chunk of time this year.
So, right. And let's be honest, our enrollment has gone down a little bit. So this whole upcoming year, I mean, we're going to have 4, but we also want to add a 5th. I guess my point is we did more with less last year, and now we're going to have that person back and we're going to have a full team. And yet we want to convince the public that it's smart to add another one on top of that. And I'm saying that as a completely ignorant person when it comes to the job. I'm saying it as an average Joe that pays the taxes going, how does that make sense? So that's the hurdle I'm getting over, and I'm kind of hoping that either you or Jamie can convince me otherwise.
Katie, let me give a shot at this. So, Matt, one of the things that I've done while in the district is I've tried to analyze all of the contracts that we have. And I think you have a copy of those things where I saw we could reduce funds that are being spent out, do things in-house. But I've also had the opportunity to sit with Katie and take a look at the special ed staffing in the district. And I can tell you, the school psychologists are grossly understaffed. I would have encouraged her to ask for 2. We settled on 1, but to have 0 and move forward with only 4 school psychologists limits what we are able to do with these highly talented people. As we move forward and we start analyzing data in order to be able to provide instruction for our students and using that to leverage getting higher achievement, these people are so talented in their training that they're vital across the board. So I strongly encourage you to look at adding a 5th person to this group of talented people. And that brings us more in line with the ratio of what should be happening. I'd be open to adding a 6th one too.
Thank you, Jamie.
I have a question. So, I just want to talk about the strategic plan a little bit. I'll start out with that. So what would be our long-term plan for this position? Obviously, you just kind of said you'd like 6 of them, Jamie, in your vision. Is that what the strategic plan would be accounting for in the foreseeable future? That's my first question. If anybody can allude to that, where we're going with our strategic plan. Because I want to know if this is going to be an influx, and then we're going to reduce the initial reviews, or is this going to just be something that's going to continue to get bigger and bigger? Because I don't want to hire somebody and then have the position, be removed in 2 years or 3. I want to have some planning before we just keep on adding positions and then have to do something different. That's my first question.
Jamie, do you want to answer?
I will. So to answer that, no, we wouldn't keep on adding and adding unless our numbers climb and we feel that we need that position, and then we would come back to you. Where I see the vision of this type of a position, it is in helping us analyze data. These are people who are highly trained in that type of work. A typical classroom teacher, we can look at data and we can tell you what we think it means. Our school psychs can help us decide which instrument is best to use in which situations. So again, I think these are highly trained. I know these are highly trained people, and I think they're valuable not only in the special education realm, which they're required for, but also in the general ed as we're trying to push forward.
Okay. Thank you. My second question. So do we have anybody else in the district or in the past that does IQ testing? Because from the information here, this is a big part of it, the testing of the IQ. Is there anybody that we can have that's in a different position or incapable of doing that? Or have we done that in the past differently at all?
Our school psychologists are the only ones trained in psychoeducational assessments. It's a large part of their, like Jamie had said, a large part of their training. So there is no other educational professional that can serve in that role. No one else can administer an IQ test. And again, yeah.
That's my big question. And then my next question would be, what is the cost or average estimated cost per year for this position? It's not on any of this information.
Okay.
Probably
ahead,
total
Mike.
compensation package would be slightly under 100,000.
Including benefits?
That's including benefits, correct.
Okay,
Total
thank you.
compensations.
Thank you.
Hey, Carrie.
Yeah, this is a simple decision, it seems to me. All you have to do is look at the ratio between psychologists and student enrolled. And anybody that's ever worked in education would look at this and say, my God, I mean, how are we ever retaining the 4 that we've got when we've got a ratio of 1 psychologist for every 1,190 students. Where, you know, the average, the average, you know, around the state is like, you know, under 1,000. I mean, it just seems to me that we're just, and if we have somebody on maternity leave, I mean, this is a crushing blow. And if I were a school psychologist in the Manitowoc public school system, I'd rather work in Kiel where they only have one for 716 or something. So I could do my job effectively rather than just, you know, just being under, you know, under the kinds of pressure that this load puts on someone. It just seems that just on that alone, we should vote yes for this.
As somebody who used a psychologist as an educator and then sat as an LEA rep on the IEP teams, these people are invaluable. And if you don't get good information when you're sitting at that meeting, at that IEP meeting, and you don't get good information that someone has had time to go through and present very well, your IEP meetings and getting kids the help that they need sometimes don't work so well. You've got to have somebody who has the time to look at the student and make great decisions and work with the team. What excites me about this is the additional service that you may get out of these people for regular ed students. Because we have some students in need, and these people are pretty highly trained and can help those students that right now aren't getting any help. So when, you know, agreeing with Carrie, I just fully support this, and we need this for the kids.
Anybody else?
On an aid standpoint, we would receive a 85% special education categorical aid on the position. So if it's coming in at $100,000, the second year after, like next year, we'd have to pay for that because we don't have it in this year's expenses. But then we would receive additional special education categorical aid to that too. Under the Wisconsin Act 221, that's a special percentage. You know, I think the other balance of that, they kind of chalk up to what goes to general ed. You know, nurses, social workers, and counselors all have a percentage that work for those positions that we get additional aid for special education services, if it helps to know.
Angela, just clarification there too. There's a delay in getting reimbursement. So for example, if we find our population really dropped where we didn't need as much and we reduced our staff by one, we still have that aid though the next year after.
Correct.
Just because there's a lag in that. So it's not like we aren't getting that funding for that.
I just want, is there any way we can get support staff for the people that we have right now, the four psychologists that we have? Is there a way we can add support staff so they can do their job more effectively?
Because of the nature of their work, that would not be something that we could use like a paraprofessional or an educator.
Any sort of position that would help them do their job.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately. No.
The problem, Matt, is that like the IQ test, first of all, depending on it's you give the amount of subtests as the student can go. So, you know, when I would do these at the office, you can be there for 2 hours just with the one test, and you have to give not only the IQ test, but the achievement test, and then, you know, all the other, you know, supportive, emotional supportive things that you're looking at as well. So there's no one that can step in, and it's not a sheet of paper that you can give to someone to have them fill out. There are assessments like that, but the IQ one and the achievement one, you're sitting with somebody for 1.5 to 2 hours, manipulating things, you know, and taking notes. And so with, you know, there's nobody that would even be allowed to administer that. And so when we talk about, you know, administrative help, it's not like I can hand this off to a secretary, because then once you have all that data, it now has to be put into a very long report. You know, and the IEP reports, you know, are pretty long. And they're different from just sort of a clinical report that I would write in my practice, but you're synthesizing all that information together. And then on top of that, offering recommendations and interventions to the team. So it's very involved. It's a very involved process. And I wish that there was a way that, you know, someone else could, the only way that we could do it, and I think I wouldn't suggest doing this now, because I think there's an urgency, but I think in the future, you know, one of the things that we could do, one of the things that's lacking in this field is it's very hard to get internships. You know, so we may look at, and I just looked at UW-Madison, you need a year-long internship. You know, the internship that I had to do, and I'm in clinical, but it's the same. You have to go somewhere in the United States and do internship, and they're few and far between. So, I mean, one of the things we could look at in the future is maybe we become a destination where the student, they're in their doctoral program, they know how to do that, but they would be supervised by somebody. You know, I think when we think about long-term strategic plan, you know, maybe that's something that we want, and it's a win-win for a lot of reasons, right? We get somebody back into our community, you know, that's living here for a year. I think there's, but there's not.
So I'm just asking the questions that
Yeah.
I believe that I should be asking. The thing I want to be clear about though is we can't have our cake and eat it too. So like if we need this, which it sounds like we really need it, and we're, you know, I'm okay. However, I want to make sure that we have pools for our young youth at the middle school so they can swim and get some exercise in, because our mental health isn't just, you know, one thing or another. It's our whole environment and how we operate. It's the relationships you build all day long. So having a professional, yes, I'm a force for it. However, if I'm going to have to close the middle school pools because we don't have enough money, that's a concern for me as well. So $100,000 a year is concerning to me, because I know the pools are going to cost about $150 each at the middle schools. So I'm just trying to ask the questions so that we all have information to make the best decision, so that we can say, well, we're going to have to do this because we did this.
Right.
Thankfully, we had a referendum that passed, so we can move another problem down the road. But I'm still going to ask the questions, and I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah, and I don't think you should. I appreciate that. Anybody else, Tony?
Yeah, I just, Katie, thank you for that report. And I felt this was worth repeating because I've seen some information flying around social media. And, you know, there is a big difference between a clinical psychologist and this position, right? So just to reiterate to the public, this position does no diagnosing, does not provide any therapy. It's really helping our students with assessments and IQ tests and just with the IEPs is what I understand, right?
It looks at how a student's academic ability, social emotional functioning is impacting their ability to access instruction. So they do help with doing some identifying of students with disabilities, but not specific to mental health disorders. They don't diagnose mental health disorders.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. And, how long has that been commonplace in public education?
Long time.
Since about 1974.
And
When I would imagine when the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act was started. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, so it's been going on for a long time. It's not like a new thing. The other question I had is, you know, you touched on, or you mentioned that this position would help kids with social emotional learning. Can you expound upon that more and give me some examples of what that might entail?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So when we have our 360 team process, which is a group of educators, teachers, building administrators, deans of students, counselors, identifying a student that has maybe some skill deficits. That can be academic deficits, that could be behavioral deficits. So we look at the whole child and identify some priorities of concern. And then when we're talking about a behavioral deficit, it's typically either a social functioning deficit or an emotional functioning deficit. So there's a reason for that behavior to be occurring. Is it because it's a peer related issue? Is it because it's a, impulse related issue? Whatever the case may be. So when they're supporting those teacher teams and developing intervention plans for kids, they are helping to identify some potential supports and strategies to address both academic deficits and that social emotional deficit. That's again, going back to that impacting that student's ability to be successful in the classroom and access instruction. We also have students with emotional behavioral disabilities. So part of their role in when we get to the point, if we get to the point of needing to do a special education evaluation, then that emotional behavioral disability impairment area requires assessing students' ability to socialize their internal behaviors, their externalizing behaviors. It takes a whole comprehensive look at the social emotional functioning of that student in order to determine whether or not they are a student with a disability or there's, some other needs that we have in place. So it's all through that academic lens and through that access to instruction. What's getting in the way of that student being successful in the classroom, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jim.
I would just, there's another element here and it gets a little complex and please, Janie or Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll tie in a couple of things that were said and create some more context here. Biff made reference about how valuable this person is to the general ed teacher too, okay? There has been known for years that there is a tendency if kids aren't succeeding to put them into special education, okay? And as Jamie said, some of this is forming our team, our solutions team to say, what aren't we doing in a general ed classroom maybe that prevents this overclassification because we're getting ahead of it. And so, if in fact what we hope to bring about by having this additional expertise into this, we're examining our practices. And the federal government has been trying to do this for a long time. At one point in time, because of the amount of, when they were trying to raise the academic bar and all of a sudden there was an increase of kids going into special ed, what they did was this was years back, they held funds. Well, they took them to court and it was proved to be unconstitutional because the IEP. So now what do we have that's evolved over the last, 10 years, or so? You have response intervention. It was the whole intent of saying we're not doing what we need to do in the general ed classroom. So we have a high number of special ed students. I can't tell you that we have overclassified. I can only tell you by trends that would suggest that we have. So we're not doing something right maybe in the general ed classroom. This is a level of expertise that comes together with us to help get that back. And as Jamie was even suggesting, quite often kids come in and they don't come out. So again, not only correcting practice, but potentially getting kids out because we have served them and turn that situation around.
So are you suggesting that potentially if we are overclassifying, that can be a result of just having such a backlog of students that we haven't been able to revisit or retest or reassess or whatever? Is that
it's more of, it's right now we have to prove that we've gone through these various stages of assessing what we're doing in the general ed classroom. That gets just complex and it gets involved. And it's the same thing with Success for All recognizes they have an intervention committee saying we're gonna spot kids that something's not helping them. And we have to come together and figure that out. That could be the school psych, or working with others to figure out what's going on there. So it's a little bit more of a bigger problem solving thing than not doing what we have to do when that time comes. If that's.
Yeah, no, the other thing I was gonna say too, I can think of a case, of a high functioning autism, this person that I'm thinking of, they had a 145 IQ, but their social, and they were at the high school and their social deficits, they carry around a teddy bear or, they also with autism, they have trouble with, socially connecting. And this person loved to read and they would come into the classroom and they would start reading. And this person was so well read. Because they're brilliant, and the teacher, the gen ed teacher, even though they had an IEP, it's very hard to understand. Is because to the gen ed teacher, even though they were trained, it looks like the person's being oppositional, and that they just are not coming in and getting ready to do. I think it was a foreign language. And it wasn't that the student was trying to be disrespectful. This is what they do. This is what they do. They come in and but so there sometimes is a rub with gen ed and special ed because there's not the support there for the gen ed teacher to understand, which I think then, complicates the matter of, are we really supporting? We can write the best IEP in the world, but if no one's doing the intervention or can't, or doesn't get the support to do it, that's difficult. So I think that's the other thing that often happens that I've seen. Students coming, that the teachers just don't have that support sometimes. And I think that's where that expertise can come in, that you're, again, constantly evaluating if this isn't working, what are we trying? Yeah, Chris.
Can I move to approve?
Yes,
Yeah.
please do. Thank you. Any other discussion? We have a motion to approve. Well, we have a motion to second. So, thanks. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. Thanks for the discussion. Thank you
all
for
very much.
the information.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Out-of-state travel request for district energy specialist. And is,
We're gonna forego that.
Okay.
I talked to Richard today and due to some other circumstances, he is not able to travel.
Oh,
So we
okay.
no longer need to address that.
okay,
So,
all right. Thank you, Angela. Okay, so then I'm gonna turn it over to Mike for, our next item. This was, brought forward from our board meeting, our closed session. Mike, you wanna talk a little bit about our, CPI?
Yes, thank you. From the state of Wisconsin, the WERC, the Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission, determines a consumer price index, CPI, for the school districts across the state. For next school year, 23-24, the WERC indicated that 8% is the maximum CPI for the state. With that being said, the MEA, Manitowoc Education Association, is a certified union. They certified last fall. They certify every year with a vote. If they have over 50% of their people vote yes for membership, they are a certified union. And as a result of that, then we engage in negotiations with the MEA relative to a CPI increase for the teachers and how that may be distributed. Those are the two things we can negotiate. So in the closed session, you indicated to us that you gave us the directive to engage in the negotiations process with the MEA, make an offer of a 4.5% CPI increase, which we did a week ago Monday. We had a tentative agreement that evening. They took it to their membership on Monday, 2 days ago. It was ratified by the MEA, the 4.5% CPI increase. So here I am tonight. Now, I just want to point out a couple more things to you. And one of them is that CC 7, they had school districts send their proposed, what they thought was going to be their projected CPI increase for the 23-24 school year. There were 125 school districts that engaged in that survey, and I shared that with the personnel committee a couple weeks ago, and the average there was 4.4%. So looking at that really indicates to us that 4.5% was fair and was definitely, in the ballpark. Then there's one more thing in this proposal, and it's called the STEP. '23, '24 school year effective July 1st. Questions?
We don't need a motion in a second, so,
We don't.
no. So if there's any, questions, we just need to approve.
When you articulate the step, is that, can you explain that a little more?
Sure. So in the teacher matrix, there's teachers are in certain cells with masters, degree, so many years experience. And of course, when you do the CPI goes into that cell, so to speak, and you get that 4.5% increase. Then there's the step. The step is a longevity piece, which helps move them through the salary schedule. So if somebody starts at the bottom of the salary schedule, there's a bottom, a minimum, and a maximum to the top. If you didn't have the step, somebody would virtually never move, because the only thing that would happen is they'd go up by the CPI, but the range would move with the CPI at the same time. So they virtually wouldn't move. The step allows them to go from the bottom to the top in a fairly reasonable time period. And it's that mechanism that helps make that happen. And the step is a common thing to the state of Wisconsin in school districts. It's not unique to Manitowoc. Does that help, Matt?
Yep, and the 1,800 is what we've picked.
That's what I have been told has been historical. Thanks for that question. I left that.
That's
off.
kind of what I'm trying to ask.
It's been, that's been
I understand how it
historical.
works.
Matter of fact, Lori went back to all the way back to 2018. That 1,800 was there, so we could probably go back. Who knows the when and how long that's been in existence? That same amount of money.
Thank you.
Any other discussion at all? And remember, this is before we vote on this, I know historically, we also talk about a CPI for others. So this is just for teachers.
Yeah.
And so I know we've talked about CPI. I know we have a whole other group of employees out there. So what is our plan like? Just so everybody knows that this is just about teachers today, and is there a plan moving forward?
Yes, thank you. And the reason why we wanted to move this forward a little bit more quickly is because on May 15th, by May 15th, we have to issue contracts to teachers for the 23-24 school year. And we want to do it with the new numbers, so to speak, if I can use that kind of a term, because otherwise we'd be using the old numbers. We'd be generating 2 contracts where we can get this done in once. We'd be doing twice the work. So I want to move this on a little bit more expeditiously. With that being said, I'm pretty confident that by the end of May, we will be coming to you with a CPI increase for other groups throughout the district. So within the month of May, we'll be coming forward with that recommendation.
I'll just say
They don't have a union. Do they?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So do they get to ratify somehow?
no.
Okay.
So technically and legally, we don't negotiate with them.
Okay.
However, them.
Has the step increase changed from year to year at all? Or has it always been 1,800 every single year for the last 20 years?
Well, Lori went back to 2018 because I asked that very question. And she went back, so what is that, 5 years or so? And it's been $1,800. We didn't go beyond 2018. Matt.
Thank you for answering.
It's been quite a while.
This last year, we did not do a step though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, well, we already have a motion and a second. All in favor of the 4.5 CPI and the 1,800 step, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, other business, there's this establishing a CISA 7 representative for MPSD. Matthew held that position last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'd like to do, is just get some more information about, before someone becomes a representative, what does this really entail? The meetings, the activities, things like that. So, I'm just gonna get us some more information. I don't think this has to be done today, but, I want everybody to have their eyes wide open if they say that they want to do this. And then the other thing, though, is we have established a representative to the January WSB Delegate Assembly. So if you remember last year, it was Kathy. There's a delegation that goes on at the convention, and you basically bring you're the voice for our board when it comes to, the things that they're deliberating about. So is there anybody that, has an interest that would like to do that? The January,
Yeah, what they do is they have resolutions. I think.
right?
Yeah, I would be interested. In that.
Okay.
That was Carrie, that's what
Okay.
he said.
Excellent. Well, we need a motion and a second, to, approve Carrie.
I motion, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Perfect. And then I'll get back to everyone on the CISA.
We need an alternate also, Stacy.
Oh, we need an alternate. Okay. All right,
I'd be willing to be the alternate.
Chris. Okay. All right.
I
Awesome.
was gonna offer the first one.
All right.
Oh, you
Don't
want
get
to do it?
sick, Carrie.
Well, I mean, honestly,
All right.
if you
So
really want it.
thank you, Chris. So do I have a first and a second to have Chris as our
Motion.
motion?
Second.
You
All
were
right,
like one of those
all in
things
favor
over
to have Chris Abel be our alternate. Signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any
Carrie, you
opposed?
really enjoy going to those.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was,
don't you?
you know, on the, I did this with the state Democratic. I don't, you know, I hate to bring that term up
Whatever.
in front of you, but, nevertheless, I was on the resolution.
Are you triggered, Matt?
And platform, no, resolutions and platform committee for the Democratic Party.
No, that's.
So it's the same kind of thing.
Right. And you got the experience with it too, and then if you could take him, if he's,
Sure.
take him going, wow, that
Sure.
was really good.
Yeah. You find some good places to eat.
There you go.
Okay, so then the last thing, just a couple, remarks before we talk about our, future meeting dates. Just to let everybody know that, these are just things that popped up in our email, but, Madison has a big bingo night tomorrow. Carrie, I know, has won major prizes at the last
Yeah, I
year's
did,
annual.
actually, yeah.
So it's at the Madison Gym, 5:30 to 7.
Could you repeat the date again?
Yes, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, Thursday, 5:30 to 7, at Madison,
In the gym.
Elementary.
In the gym, yeah.
And in the gym. Yes. And then, the other thing, and again, we'll probably make an announcement about this, but this just came across, and I didn't see all the board on here, but, they're gonna do a dedication for the new scoreboard, for the
Oh,
baseball.
cool.
And so, the date of that is Tuesday, May 9th. We are gonna be playing Sheboygan South at Municipal Field. Game is scheduled to start at 4:30. So if we could get everyone there by 4:10, that would be great. Again, I don't think we're gonna be on the, part of this picture, but I just thought it's a neat thing that, we had a group that came together to make this a reality. So,
It's a board meeting.
what's that?
We have a board, well, we have a board meeting later.
Okay.
4:10.
4 o'clock, arrival, 4:10.
Okay, so just wanted everybody to know about that. We could probably be here by then because we couldn't go to the game, but we could go to the part of it. To the, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just wanted everyone to know about that. And, I think that is all the information I wanted to talk, just, obviously keep, just your watching emails and calendars and social media. There's so many things going on in the spring. So anything that you can make it to support, our sports, our arts, our music, all that kind of stuff.
Can I tag on to you?
Yes.
For one that I forgot today is National Professionals Day, or administrative assistants, secretaries, executive assistants. Like to thank Lori for not only serving me, but the board, but through all our assistants throughout our school districts at their various levels, in terms of we appreciate what they're done for us.
Thanks. We got to get out of here early so you can go to one of the parties in town.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my son drew a little picture for our bus driver. I think it was bus driver appreciation yesterday. So we gave him a picture bus driver in the morning and at night, so. I did want to give a shout out to that as well. I didn't know it was, but we spent about 25 minutes at night. From like,
Yes, I read recently in the news that some school district is ratifying something to allow their school board members to drive the buses because they don't have enough people, so. Just in case.
I got my license.
School board members.
Yeah, school board members.
Yeah. So you could,
Well,
Because we
Look at
can't
the
do that now,
opportunities.
so, right.
we'll be good with that, transportation contracts in the city. Look at me. They'll bring applications.
That's a volunteer.
Who needs the extra?
Okay, so, future meeting dates, so in August, we traditionally, this board has done, the general meeting the second Tuesday of the month, and then a special meeting the fourth Tuesday. That is how it's been for a long, long time. We switched it to accommodate, one of our board members and moved it to Wednesday. I am proposing that we move it back to Tuesday and just be consistent on that schedule. So we would have the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month for our regular and special meeting at 6 o'clock, if that works for everybody. Okay. All right. And then, so what I would propose then is we have a couple other weeks to play with, or we could, there's a couple things we could do as far as our committee as a whole. Typically, that special board meeting is supposed to be special. So we could keep that as small as we possibly can and have our working meeting that same time as we could adjourn our regular special meeting and go right into that. Or we could pick the week in the middle.
Let's do
The week in the middle.
no,
Or
the former.
Okay, the former. Okay.
Yeah.
So that'd be a late night on some of these. I mean, this is a special
Maybe
meeting.
not. She said keep the agenda small.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
How successful have we been?
Well,
Other than personnel stuff, there's not a real mandatory reason.
Okay.
We have to do a lot of this
You can do
stuff.
that.
So are you suggesting just one? Maybe the whole meeting?
I would just add that that's the way we start. If we find that we've got such a backlog of stuff that we really need to get, that just can't carry it into the summer, then, I mean, we would look to add another time. Right now, I would start with what we would otherwise schedule.
Okay.
But we have to look at our work and make sure that we're taking care of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then something. Then 2 meetings, let's do it.
I mean, let's try and see. I mean, again, if we see like we're not able to accomplish what we need to, we can
Sure.
look at this again. So.
And I think that would come back
Society.
down to what we're attempting to do is, are we doing things we don't need to do?
Yeah, right.
So, but that will take some work by the ad hoc committee or somebody to
Right.
determine that.
Okay, so we will meet at 6 o'clock. Our special meeting, we will have a brief agenda, and then we will go into our working session of committee of the whole on that fourth.
Okay,
Okay.
that's cool.
All right. Okay, I don't think there's any other future meeting dates because we don't have to talk about all the different committees, which is great. I did start to, just as a side note, I did start to watch. So Rockford, Illinois does a version of this. I don't really see it yet, but they use a committee of the whole structure. It's interesting. So, if you have time and or just bored and want to watch more board meetings, check out one of theirs.
If your Netflix isn't working.
And it did not have like that,
Right,
that
yeah.
10-second or that 15-second forward, but.
And I
it's
looked
interesting to
at
see.
a load of that and it raises the question, are they doing more than they need to do?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
The same as, and I think most schools probably are in the same situation where they're doing a lot of stuff and it really isn't the big rock stuff, or are they just consumed because they've always done it?
All right, well,
No, I was just agreeing with, everything I've read about being on a school board tells me to trust the superintendent and the staff to get things done, and you kind of monitor and make sure they're not screwing up, okay? And sometimes I wonder if sometimes boards at every level in every division don't sometimes jump in when there's people that kind of are doing what they're supposed to do.
I think it's a two-way type of thing. Are we giving you what you need?
Right.
And are we also consuming you with things you don't need?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so I think it's a
And that's
two-way
what I'm
thing.
hoping, and that's what I'm hoping this, committee would do.
Right.
Is that we decide once and for all when we need to, so staff doesn't have to come, poor Katie came last time to a committee meeting and, she doesn't know, she has no directive from us about what we want. But she has a need to come with us for something. So, I mean, again, this is all about doing better, and I think we can do better, and establish better relationships across the board, if we can identify some of those things. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you. I'll take a motion in a second, to adjourn. Okay. Motion one, Carrie.
Yeah,
And
I did.
Biff did it too. Yeah. I'm giving it to you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor for adjournment tonight, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.